Looking for a Vox, welcoming the Mark III Mini to the Paisleys Park studio. These events took place over the course of 3 days, about an hour's total worth of work. The first thing I usually do when a guitar arrives is strip off the strings, making sure to take care of the ferrules, and just kind of get it ready to be set up and cleaned. I kind of knew what I was getting into with this one because this is my second Mark III Mini. The smiles per mile of the first one were really missed after I sold it. When I had room in the budget, I picked another one up because that's the way I like to waste money. Now, the first tricky thing about these is you have to be very careful with the ferrules. They come out very easily, and it's very easy to lose them. The next thing you have to worry about, like every other guitar that arrives, is you need to tighten everything. I always start with the tuning pegs and then normally check the tuning keys. That tends to be where most guitars have their problems right out of the box, and it can really make a difference in tuning stability, as well as the way that the pegs feel when you tune them. Then I usually line up the slots in these antique styles so that I can cut the lengths similarly. Now, I know that my hand is going to block some of the shots, but all I'm doing is basically hand tightening some of the screws to hold things in place. That includes the strap buttons as well as the neck, just to make sure everything's as stable as possible. Then I use my handy-dandy mechanical pencil to put a bit of graphite in the nut slots so the strings will slide easily. And then comes the fun process of taping off the guitar. This tends to take a little bit of time. So I might as well go ahead and tell you that the weight on this guitar is a little different than the first one, but it's a poplar body, so that's not entirely unheard of because poplar tends to be a wood that varies a lot in its density. The neck is maple. I think it's a C, but I'm not sure about the cut. It's a Purple Heart fretboard with an 18.75 scale, 19 medium frets, and a 1.65 nut. It comes with stock 12s that I'm going to replace, and at the time that I purchased it, it was $110. I got it from Vox Amps USA, which is also affiliated with Roland. And it always says it's going to be a couple of weeks between the time that you order and the time that it's delivered. But in all honesty, I've never had one go past 4 days. They're pretty good about arriving. They're packaged very well. It's a box in a box. And the Brown company that delivered it neglected to add the speed holes that I've become so familiar with in cardboard boxes from other companies. They really do quite well as a combination. The tape that I'm using is nothing special, simply painter's tape, and I'm tearing it into different size pieces to keep my straight edges against the frets, and in some cases I'm rolling it over as a fold to take up room within the space between the frets. I also cover up the pickup because one important lesson that I've learned is to cover up that front pickup because as I use the steel wool in the first step of my polishing process, it'll make the pickups kind of metal hairy if you're not really careful. And so it's just simply easier to cover that pickup with a bit of blue tape. One of the other hints is to always leave tape hanging off the edges because that makes it a lot easier to remove later. Now I'm going to take steel wool and lightly go over every single fret all the way down the neck. I know that this is a very time-consuming process, but it's just something that I've gotten into the habit of doing. Preparing these guitars and bringing them into the studio this way is to me as much of the buying process as playing them is. This is really something that I enjoy doing, kind of making the guitar my own. Now you can see there's a lot of the steel wool left over on the tape, so I'll use some compressed air to blow that off. Then I'm going to use the side of a polishing block, a fingernail polishing block, to go back over the frets and to kind of shine them up a little bit. Then once you peel off the tape, you can see a much greater difference in the coloration between the frets and the neck. On old guitars, I'll spray the lemon oil directly onto the fretboard, but on a new guitar, I tend to spray it on the cloth, and you can see what a difference that makes. They tend not to be as dry. If I notice that it's an issue, I will apply it directly. Now, this is something that I don't suggest you handle this way, but it's become kind of a thing for me. I like the edges of my fretboard angled as well as the frets cleaned up. I do have to be more careful around the body. Once again, spray it clean. Now I use the Blue Gunk, the waterless wax, to go back over the fretboard, which seals it, and also helps to keep the frets not only shiny, but smooth. I'm going to put 12s back on it. I've chosen Ernie Ball because at one point they were on sale. I tend to go back and forth between the Ernie Ball and the GHS Boomers. Now, as I string on these minis, I usually take it at least 2 pegs, sometimes 2.5 past the peg that I'm using. That tends to give me, in my opinion, a satisfactory wrap for stability so it doesn't slip loose, especially when using these slotted tuners, because that way I can stick the end of the string down inside the slot. Plus, with them all being at a very similar angle and a similar measurement to extra strings, I just somehow compulsively feel better about that. Some people try to get their tuning keys to line up. I've never really been able to do that, but it at least kind of gets me started in that. I am, if nothing else, a creature of my own habits. And again, this is another opportunity to just relax into the process. This to me is kind of like some people feel the relaxation of jogging. Restringing guitar is that way for me, which is why I have a tendency to restring my friends' guitars when they ask me to. After I brought the guitar up to tune, this is the first time that I left it alone. The next day, which I don't have footage of, I would check the action as well as the neck relief, not in that order, and then I would set up the intonation. I tend to use my floor tuner, and I know that I can lay it flat on the desk to set up the intonation, but this is kind of my habit. Now, the Voxes typically come relatively close for some reason, but they still require a little bit of tweaks, especially on the low E, the G, and the B. This is a process that takes a little bit of time, but it's time well spent. What I'm doing here is tuning the string open and then checking the tuning at the 12th fret. If it's sharp, I tend to move the saddle away from the neck. In other words, making the string just a little bit longer. Then I tune it again, check it at the 12th fret again, and then adjust the saddle. If it happens to be flat, then I will move the saddle towards the neck, which will shrink the string, and that will keep the string in tune at that 12th fret. Now, it's never going to be perfect. No guitar is ever going to be perfect. But if I can get it between the 12 and the 0 in tune, I tend to get less complaints from folks about how awful the tuning of these wee beasties is. This is also an opportunity to go ahead and check the tension of the tuning keys and try to adjust that to be quite similar. As I mentioned, this process does take a little bit of time, and it's something over the course of the first week or so I'm going to have to adjust in very tiny increments in order to preserve its tuning stability. By doing this basic setup, by securing the tuning pegs, the tuning keys, putting graphite in the nut so the string can maintain a consistent tension on each side of it, adjusting the saddles in order to preserve the intonation, setting the neck relief in an appropriate tension, as well as adjusting the height of the saddles to preserve the right distance from the frets, especially in the middle of the board. I put the guitar in the best position that it can be in to be not only playable, but enjoyable to the ear. it's a combination of both the feel and the sound that I'm trying to preserve, because so many people have such issues with these guitars as they are. I don't want to give them any more ammunition to judge these things too harshly. Yes, they are temperamental, and yes, they do require attention, but when you're finished, it truly can be quite worth it, because they are very enjoyable to play. And that's what we're here to do, to play. It's not like buying a new car and expecting it to be able to drive it off the lot. There's not only a break-in period, but there's also an adjustment period. This is the equivalent of making sure to get your mirrors set right, or your seat in the right position, or figuring out where the windshield wiper control is. This is just a matter of setting up what is a standard setup, generic setup, something that is meant to be taken over and finished for the individual player. Now, the things that I may have issues with about these guitars are very different than the things other people may find difficult. The Les Paul Pee-wee comes to mind. The person that got that from me is not a fan of the Epiphone tuners. Truth be told, I had never noticed an issue with the tuners. My issues with the Les Paul Pee-wee were related to its neck thickness, as well as its fret height. It just didn't feel good to play. A fan of that neck would have issues with this Vox guitar because of the thinner neck and the different frets, a different feel, even though the guitars are a very similar size and similar scale, and they do play different. By now you're probably tired of hearing me talk. Why don't we get into the sounds? Why don't we play a little bit?